Okay, so this month is Rise Above It. And so Karen just sang, "You Are My Song." And what has come up for me in many conversations is this discussion around the word God. And so I say to myself, you are my song. What is the you that lyric is referring to? Now, I know it's a pretty song, and I know I'm emotionally touched by it, and I know that it gets my juices going. I was playing it, listening to it the other night, and Kevin was in bed, and he went, "What is that? It's so beautiful." He had never heard it before. I get what it does to us, but when I think about it, I have to ask myself, what is the you that the lyric is referring to? And I ask you to ask yourself, where do you get help when you need it? When, as Karen writes down in the song, she says, when you're down on your knees, anybody ever been down on their knees? Yeah. When you're down on your knees, where do you go for help? And it's not just enough to know what to know up here, is it? I know what to know. I bet you all know what to know. It's, can I know that in that moment? And what is it I'm knowing? What am I really depending on? What really is this you? What is it? Where do I go when I need to rise above it? Where do I go? You lift me up, she sings in the song. She says, you pull me through it when I let you do it. So where does a metaphysician go when he or she needs help? When we know that right where I am, God is, when it's all God, it kind of sometimes dissipates the you. Growing up Catholic, I knew where you was. It was at St. Bernard's. That's where you were. And I would take my little missal with I love the little things that hang underneath them, and you hold them out so everybody sees them flowing in the wind. And you walk down the street, and you have your rosaries positioned perfectly over your hands so they see the cross dangling beneath you. Hello, Mr. Edwards, and you're on your way to church, and everybody knows you're this perfect little boy, and then you show up at church, and you get in church, and you cry to God. I remember once, as we get to the Easter season, I always think about this. I remember once it was Good Friday, and the report cards got handed out on Good Friday. I suppose that was to give us the real feeling for what it felt like to be Jesus on Good Friday. So they'd give out the report card, and I remember that particular, my son's not in the room, I don't think, so that particular Friday, I flunked geography, history, and science simultaneously. This was 7th grade. By 8th grade, I was an exemplary student. Of course, after you flunk three subjects, it's amazing how much you learn. But I flunked all 3, and I remember sitting there during the Stations of the Cross saying to myself, you think you have it bad, Jesus? You don't even know what's going to happen when I get home. This scourging at the pillar, nothing compared to my Father. So I always knew where to go. I knew who you were. You were Jesus. You were Mary. You were Joseph. You were God the Father. So then you come into a teaching like this, and you're told, no, you're it. So what do you do when you're it and you need someone to pull you up off of your knees? Where do you go? Well, what's interesting is, because this is a really important question for all of us to ponder as we step into understanding that right where I am, God is, right? So when we recognize that it's all God, when we recognize ourselves as God, and we ask ourselves, who do we turn to? Well, sometimes we have to turn to each other, don't we? I think I'm turning to Karen Mitchell to help me, but I'm not. I'm turning to God. Because if I know that I am God, and so is everyone else, then I know when I go to Nada's place, happy and relaxed, I'm stepping into God. And especially when I get one of your facials, I step right into God. Or a massage, or any of the incredible things you do there, right? That's God. I go to somebody to tell them what's going on with me, and I am God going to God saying, I need you for a moment to step into your highest consciousness and know something, because I'm having trouble right now remembering who I am. And that's all that's happening. You're having a moment. Any of you have those moments? Those little moments where you forget who you are? And you got to go to somebody to help remind you who you are. The problem is, we all tend to go to the person who we can tell our trouble to, who will tell it right back to us, only worse on their part. Do you ever find that? Because like attracts like. So I see Ronnie, and I go, oh my God, Ronnie, you know what's happening to me? Oh my God. And she goes, you think that's bad? I had the same thing happen. And blah, blah, blah. Now we're both drowning. And now we both have to get ye to a practitioner or someone. Then we both have to find the you. So it's really important today for us to just think about this for a moment. Who's the you? Where is the you? What's the you use? You lift me up. Sometimes we turn within. And when we turn within, we think to ourselves, what am I turning into? What's in there? What is in there? If it's all me, if it's all God, it's all me. What's in there? But that is God. It's not that God is separate from who I am. It's just that I'm on a level of God. I'm like on an elevator. I'm on 41st floor, and God's at the 1,000th floor, the expression, the perfect expression of God, and I just can't, I'm stuck. So I need to call up to God and say, could you please get this elevator moving? Can you get me back up to the floor where I want to exist on, where I want to live on? It's all God, don't get me wrong. The 41st floor has a lot to learn, a lot of things for me to learn from. But I don't want to be there. So that's all it is, and I loved what Ellen said. It's just perspective. If you don't want to be there, you don't have to denigrate it. As Carl Jung says, what we resist persists. You don't have to get into a big fight with it, a big struggle with it. No, it's just like, okay, here's what I'm experiencing. Here's the sensation. I would rather have a different ride. Clearly, Ellen. I would rather go on the turtles that just kind of go around nicely. Remember the turtles in Disneyland? I remember going on those. The teacups. I got sick on the teacups. How many people have been on the teacups? Those are nauseating. And of course, when you're with children, they're going, come on! And you're like, right? I'm shocked I never threw up on one of those things. It's all a ride. You get to choose. There's our theme for the day, Ellen. You get to choose the ride you're on. Just like you get to choose what you means. You have an infinite amount of yous to choose from. You know, recently I went into a church to catch my breath, a beautiful Roman Catholic church. And I went in there to catch my breath, and I was explaining it to someone. I said, oh, I went into this beautiful church. I just had some stuff on my mind, and I just went into the church. And it was a science of mind person. And, you know, as sometimes science of mind people can be, which is annoying, this person said to me, she said, well, why did you go into a church? Don't you know God is everywhere? It's like, boom. So, of course, I didn't do that physically. I did it metaphysically in my mind. Beyond the physical. So, but here's the thing. So there's the church. What does church represent to me when I see a Catholic church? Now, it used to represent prison to me. I would see a Catholic church and I'd walk by going, hate those people, before I became evolved. But I'd be like, I hate what I learned there. I hate who I was there. I don't like the Catholic Church. Now both of my children are going to Catholic high school. Yeah, divine retribution, right? I walked into this beautiful church, a cathedral, and I sat there. And here's the thing. I instantly sat down in this church, smelled the incense, saw people praying, saw a woman kneeling in front of the Blessed Mother statue, which I used to have acerbic criticism about. I don't have that anymore. I get the oneness of it all now. I get that it's all God. And I got to tell you, I zoomed from the 41st floor to the 1,000th floor as I sat in that church. Because it's all God. There was my you that day. I went and sat in a church. So where's your you? God is consciousness. That's all God is. God is consciousness. That's all that God is. It's all of it. The consciousness of it all. And think about churches. Why do most people go to church? To pray, to commune with God. So the consciousness of a church must be at such an incredible level. All the minds in there mostly are thinking of one thing, God. Letting go of what they need to let go of. Praying for what they desire. The higher life, the better life. So church worked great. So the song that Karen just sang, You Are My Song. Here's what I take that to mean now. Not you are my song, you are my refuge, you are my answer. I go to you when I'm down on my knees. That's not it. It's not you are my answer. It's not you are my song, it's you are my answer. That the answer is available. Wherever the you is, the answer is available. Wherever my mind takes me that allows me to surrender to the truth, the answer is available. So my question to you today is, what questions do you need answered? What answers do you need? Because they're not only available, but they are expansively available for you right here, right now. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever's happening, we say, I rise above all the conditions. Whatever conditions are showing up, Ellen's absolutely right. The conditions mean nothing. It's your relationship to those conditions So whatever those conditions are, you have to know in your mind that the answer is available. Right here, right now. That's what it means I rise above all conditions, by remembering who I am. As God, the answer to everything is available. So today is Palm Sunday in the Christian faith. And Palm Sunday represented Jesus' triumphant return to Jerusalem. Palms represent victory. That's what the palms represented. They would throw the palms on the ground and someone would ride across them. Now the truth is, they would usually ride across it in a horse, because the horse represented war and victory over whatever was going on. But Jesus, of course, came into town on a donkey. And I don't think it was because they ran out of horses. I honestly think that Jesus chose a donkey because the donkey represented peace. That which we resist persists. Stop fighting it. So Jesus comes into town on Palm Sunday, and what they're doing is they are literally pouring down tribute on him, success, throwing the palms. And, as I'm getting myself more acquainted with Jesus Christ Superstar this week as we're rehearsing it, and I step back into the body of Jesus, playing Jesus, singing Jesus. I've done Jesus twice, two tours. And I remember the first time I did Jesus from the arrogant standpoint. Literally. Like, I am Jesus and you're not. That's how I played Jesus. I was brilliant, but it was a Don Johnson version, so we were all in like white Miami Vice outfits, and I had little short spiky hair, and that's Jesus, exactly. Jesus. And that was the production, but I really did. I was like, I am Jesus. And it doesn't hurt that the entrance for Jesus is, here's everybody on the stage like screaming, and then they all bow down, and Jesus walks up this big staircase, and there he is at the top, the pinnacle of the stage. Everyone's bowed down to you. And that's a great moment in time for anybody playing Jesus. The second time, they wanted to dirty it up a bit. So I had just finished playing Candide, and my hair was down to here, and it had been permed to play Candide, so I had this head full of curls, but they had started to get less curly, so it kind of looked really scraggly, and they were like, perfect. That's a perfect Jesus. So this was a more earthy Jesus. This is the one where Kevin played Pontius Pilate and got to kill me every night. It's a long tour, right? And I'd already started going to Unity to listen to Dr. Eric Butterworth then. And I didn't have the ego that I had a few years before when I played him. And that was a catharsis for me playing Jesus that time. I literally cried every night singing Gethsemane. And it wasn't just because the notes were so high, but I cried every night. And I cried every night when I would get to any part of the play that hit me really profoundly. And this moment of Palm Sunday, which we're in today, there's a moment where Jesus, they're all singing the song, Christ, you know I love you. And they're just going wild on stage in balloons, and in Chicago, which is where we did it, the confetti's coming down, and it's just a wild production. And I'm just standing there, and I remember the moment when it really hit me in rehearsals. Because right after it all done, I'm supposed to say, if you knew all that I know, my poor Jerusalem, you'd know the truth. If you knew all that I know, you'd know the truth, but you turn away. Because you want to celebrate winning something. You want to celebrate winning the fight. And Jesus wasn't about that. And I remember that one night, opening night in Chicago, where I started to sing that and my voice left me. I was like, if you knew all that I know. And I just started crying. I'm doing it now. And I got it. And that's what Palm Sunday was all about for Jesus. Coming in on a donkey, standing there and saying, it's not about the conditions of rising above. It's not about winning a war. It's not about fighting. It's about surrendering. The exact opposite. It's about surrendering. Surrender to who you are. Surrender, knowing who you are. Rise above, it usually means about rising above conditions. But I have a different message for you today. My title of my talk today is The Invisible Boundary. And the only reason that's the title of my talk is because Jay asked me for a talk title, and I didn't have one at the top of my head. And I didn't have one. And all of a sudden, the invisible boundary came through me. I was like, well, what's that? And all I kept hearing in my own mind was, just write it down, you'll know. So I did. I said, it's the invisible boundary. I think Jay even said, what's that about? I was like, I have no idea. Just put the title down. The invisible boundary, the invisible boundary. And when I first wrote it, I thought to myself, well, what it's about is we create boundaries around our conditions, and we can only go so far because of it. There's this invisible boundary around your life. And so you are limited to whatever that boundary is in your mind, and only you know what that is. Only you know how limited you are, or how far you're willing to go before you stop. There is your imaginary boundary. But this weekend, something else came up. And I was like, okay, it's not really about the conditions. It's not about our limitations. It's not about all that stuff. It's about the boundary I put around myself in terms of how much God I'm willing to be. How much of God am I willing to be? That's the imaginary boundary. How far am I willing to go with this teaching? I was, this week, someone mentioned to me that there are people out there in my own religion who have a hard time with my being so involved in understanding I am God from an inside-out perspective. And I get that, but I can't worry about what other people think. I will not delight myself. I will delight, but I will not delight. I will not take the light off of me to make other people feel comfortable. And that's the boundary. How much of you do you not let shine because it's just not acceptable? It's just not comfortable. It's more comfortable to have limitations. It's more comfortable to know who you are within a confined box. That's acceptable. That's what we're taught. Here's who you are. Girls do this. Boys do this. This IQ will go this far. This IQ will go this far. Oh, you have ADD or whatever that is, ADHD. You're going to be relegated to this type of life. How unlimited can you allow yourself to be as God? How much of me am I really expressing? And that means that I have to be willing to catch myself when I'm thinking small. And you may think I probably don't think small too often. And my small may be somebody else's gigantic, but it's still my small. And I catch myself when I'm thinking small. I catch myself when I'm dreaming small. And I catch myself when I am living behind this self-inflicted boundary of limitation. Well, God can do that, but I can't. There's something in me that can do it, but I can't. And I'm not saying we shouldn't know who we are, but I get to know who I am in this perspective of life, but I have to know what's behind it, which is what constantly moves me forward, pushes me forward. I watched Josh Sterling last night as he got up here, and I thought about who he was, 8 years ago or however long it was before he got here. What he was like when he first got here, how uncomfortable he was singing solo, singing by himself. And then watching what happened last night. That's what I'm talking about. Taking who you are and throwing caution to the wind, getting in that caged Ferris wheel and screaming your heart out, but then getting off and knowing I didn't die. I'll never do it again, but I didn't die. Right? That's what I'm talking about. That's the imaginary boundary you're putting around yourself. So, I had an aha this week during CPR. Kevin and I last week were in Palm Springs, and we were in a house, and the house cost $1.7 million. And it was the house we decided we loved, that we wanted. And we both said, well, it's a little bit outside of our price range. And I started standing in the middle of the house calculating, if I sold this and I sold this, I think I'm just about equal to buying this house. And then I caught myself. I was like, oh my God. I honestly believe that my wealth is determined by my holdings, by what I own, by my real estate. Those things that I own are my wealth. That is such a precarious little, sneaky little core belief that came up for me. And I was like, am I not the infinite prosperity of God? Do I really want to limit my wealth to this? Do I want to limit my good, my money, my finances to my job? Do I want to limit it to my family and what they're going to leave me? Mine have already left. Nothing's coming. Do I want to attach it to anything other than who I truly am? Do you want to attach anything in your life as any form of limitation to anything other than I am God and remembering who you are? That's the boundary. And there is an imaginary boundary around each and every one of us. And it's time that we found it and got rid of it. I found that one. And we took that house. Well, here's what was funny. We then saw another house right after it that was only 1.2 million that Kevin decided was the house he liked better. And I was like, well, see, we're getting more equal to this every moment. So, lest you think I don't find my core beliefs that constantly need shifting and changing. There was a woman that did the Chicago conference with me, and she said this quote, and I've never forgotten it, which is, don't make your problem smaller, make your God bigger. Don't make your problem smaller, make your God bigger. And I remember thinking about that in terms of conditions. But today, I'm thinking about that in terms of my God, bigger. It's not that you need to make every one of your issues smaller and handleable. It's that you need to make your understanding of who you are so big that nothing can throw you. Nothing can shake you or surprise you. Invisible boundaries. Invisible boundaries are invisible for a reason. It doesn't want you to remember it that you put it there. Think about that. The reason why it's invisible is because if you saw it there, if you kept seeing it there, you would probably go, get out of my way. Invisible means it has stepped into the subconscious part of your consciousness, and it is now doing the work of driving your life. So my job today is to let you know it's time for you to take that invisible boundary and put it right there in front of you. See it. Know where it is. Know how far it is. Say to yourself, if there's one thing that you're saying to yourself, I can't accomplish this. It's too late for me. I'm too old. I'm too blah, 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 whatever that is. So all you got to do, put it right out there and see it. Now know the truth about it and watch it just go away. You know, this week is Holy Week, it's called. Holy Week. And during Holy Week, we celebrate the entire journey Jesus went through in the Garden of Gethsemane and throughout the whole torture and the crucifixion and the death. And it's a very intense week. And I remember as a Catholic boy that I loved that week. It was so dramatic. I just loved the theater of it all. Because, you know, you'd go to church. We had to go to church every day during Holy Week. And something would happen and the priest would get up. And I remember we had this one young priest, I loved him, who loved to tell you the story almost like you were watching Friday the 13th. Literally, he would talk about the blood being ripped off of his hands, and I remember the parents would be like, and the kids would all be like, awesome, wow, right? So, my son would love that priest. But this week is about something so incredible, and I want you to, if to the best of your ability, whether you're Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, whatever you started out as, it doesn't matter. We just celebrate this story of one man who literally overcame all these things in life. And for me, the crucifixion this week is going to mean for me that I am going to once and for all just be done with, crucify, kill, eliminate this boundary. I get to do that. On Friday night, I get to stand up here and sing Jesus to the best of my ability, and with Dr. Reverend Maureen Hoyt, talk a little bit about the Jesus story. So I hope many of you will come and celebrate that on Friday evening at 7:30. So this week, as we go through Holy Week, give yourself an opportunity to, first of all, see where that boundary is. See what elements of your life you have somehow made into a limited expression of you. And then eliminate it once and for all. Let's put to death these self-inflicted limitations that we've put on ourselves. Let's once and for all decide that I am God means I am God everywhere I go. I'm not just God in mind. I'm not just God in theory. I am God in practice. And if I am God, then so is everyone else. You are my song. You are my answer. Everywhere you go, whatever answer you need is perfectly positioned to let itself know exactly what it is you want to know about everything. So here's your opportunity. Next Sunday, we get to celebrate Easter. We get to celebrate Passover. We get to celebrate this time in all of those religions' lives where they celebrated that joyous thing of knowing. We call it the resurrection. Well, me, it's the 1,000th floor. Whatever floor you happen to be on, call up, tell them to start the elevator, and that you are ready to rise to the highest level of consciousness you can possibly rise to. And the only reason you're sitting here in this seat today is because somehow your divine appointment knew it was time for you to hear that there is no more room in your life for limitation of any kind. You are here to do something amazing with your life. I am here to do something amazing with my life. And I know we are all doing just that. But we are now here, and this is the moment, this is the time for us to finally say, sky's the limit. I have no more limitations. What is mine to do is mine to do, and it's all of it. Namaste.